Before we get into the podcast today, I want to thank today's sponsors. First of which is the Gallery. This year we're all looking for that perfect holiday gift, and today I want to tell you about the Gallery. The Gallery Shop is a curated collection of photographs from around the world. All prints are made from 100% recycled aluminum, giving your wall that gallery finish. Right now for the holiday season, the Gallery is exclusively offering our listeners 25% off your next purchase using the code Inebri-art. That's 25% off your next purchase at thegallery.com. That's the GALRY using the code Inebri-art, the Gallery, to create your perfect space. Second of all, our returning sponsor is the Pretentious Pickle. Hannah, do you know about the Pretentious Pickle?
Yes.
You didn't know I was going to bring you? Did I?
No,
surprise you? Okay, so the Pretentious Pickle is a local shop down here on Water Street in Plymouth. They are located at 190 Water Street. And Hannah, you're just telling us that your sister's a huge fan.
She loves the Pretentious Pickle.
Yeah.
She's a big fan.
Nice.
I don't want to say number one, but she's up there.
Well, it's hard to be the number one fan. They're super popular. They do a weekly giveaway on their Facebook page.
Yeah.
And they get thousands of people entering it. So if you're a fan of pickles, and it's not just cucumbers, it's all pickled vegetables and assorted local things, bakery items, farm to table type stuff, make sure you check out their website, thepretentiouspickle.com. And you can find them at 190 Water Street, Plymouth, Mass. And tell Lorraine we sent you.
Welcome back, Inebri-ites. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast, and I am recording on apparently what's a historic day. Facebook reminded me that 4 years ago we started our first recording, so this is technically our 4-year anniversary. And joining us today is Matt Angus. No Scottish flair that I could work on there, man. From the Fast Romantics band. So thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
So. A constant, and I can't wait for this not to be a topic anymore, is, the current pandemic. What were you doing when everything hit the fan? Were you on tour? Were you in the studio?
It's kind of a pretty crazy story. We were, I was kind of at the end of my wits, to be honest. Our band had been working on what we thought was one record for the last 2 years. And we were making a lot of music, but I was just not able to finish anything. So I was getting kind of stressed, and we decided as a band to go down to California and have a bit of a band retreat. And that was March 4th.
Oh.
So we ended up, kind of in the heat of it, right when it was spiraling out of control. And that was right around when Trudeau and Trump decided to close the Canadian-U.S. border. So as a bunch of Torontonians, we were like, oh man, it's time to get the hell out of here. And so I was on a plane about a day before they shut the border down. We all changed our flights and got the hell out of there.
Oh, that's crazy. I was actually talking to someone from the band Christian Action, and they were in New York when they were talking about shutting down international flight, and they just started their tour, and he's like, we need to get back right now, or we're going to get stuck in the States.
It's a weird feeling. It's one of those things you don't think is ever going to happen to you.
Yeah, and it's I don't think a lot of people really gave much thought to the people who were in transit or overseas, and
no.
I'm sure some stories will come out about people who've been stuck somewhere for 4 months and haven't been able to go anywhere.
I have a few friends. I have a friend that's stuck in the tropics right now, and she's pretty all right with it.
Oh, I was gonna say, poor baby. So you said you're in Toronto, is that correct?
Yeah.
So we've actually talked to a couple bands from Toronto. It sounds like there's quite a music scene going on. We had Crownlands on very early on in the pandemic.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's a big music scene there. Is that accurate? Or
it's kind of, we like to call ourselves the center of Canada, the center of the universe, really.
Yeah.
But in music land, I mean, it is. I'm originally from Calgary. A version of our band formed out there years ago, and it was like just sort of the thing you did. You just like pilgrimaged to Toronto and like tried to make it somehow. So I guess it's kind of Canada's New York or whatever.
Yeah.
Canada's I guess.
Is there a lot of music venues and that sort of thing?
Yeah, for sure. It's and pretty legendary ones, like places like the Horseshoe Tavern and other places like that are kind of, historic hubs for kind of kicking off scenes, like, big acts like, Arcade Fire and Broken Social Scene all cut their teeth at venues like that.
And so you came down to California. Have you been touring through the US prior to
We've toured there, but it had been a while since we toured. It was honestly like, we had a couple of things privately that we wanted to do, and then we just thought, man, what better place to try to figure your shit out than the ocean?
Yeah, sunshine and COVID.
Yeah, it was fun. We were, like, sick of that Canadian thing. Like March, I don't know if you know this, but like Canadians in March, we're all kind of like, we go through this annual, like, oh my God, I almost want to end everything kind of thing.
Oh, kind of because it's the very end of the winter. So yeah.
So that's generally where a lot of us are like, we better get the hell out of here and find somewhere warmer. So.
Oh, see, that's interesting. New England, it's like we just never know. It's like March could be snowier than ever. December could be 75 degrees. It's a total crapshoot. We just never know what the weather's going to be like. Yeah. So do you kind of intend to stay in Toronto? Is that kind of like the future of the band, or is there kind of like a move to LA to make it kind of thing, or is that even a thing anymore? Like with the internet, like
it's not. And it's kind of, even the move that I made, with our bass player, is the only other guy that was in the band at the time, from Calgary to Toronto, it was all kind of bullshit. It's you get it in your head that you've got to be around a bunch of people in suits and ties that can make shit happen for you, and it's just not the world we live in anymore.
Yeah.
And so the same thing I would say about like moving to LA or New York or Nashville or whatever. Like I got friends that moved to Nashville to like get in the writing scene and everything, and that can be powerful, like kind of expanding your songwriting circle. But I don't think there's a point in changing cities just to like, hope that the right person sees you, because there are no right people left. Most labels are over.
And I've even seen like on YouTube, like where people are clearly not in the same location and they're working on music together, and it's kind of it looks similar to this. They're different videos of them playing in their own place and pieced together. And do you guys kind of like focus on a YouTube channel, or
it's funny, like we're still trying to get good at that shit, years and years later. Like we've always been a pretty live band. And it's one of those things where through this whole pandemic, there's been this trend of like live streams and everything. And, and we've tried, I live with Curdy, who's my bandmate and also my partner. And, so we've been able to sort of do these 2-person live streams with, stripping down our songs and everything. But we're this kind of big 6-person, highly arranged, really excitable band that like, I think it's been a bit weird to try to convert our shit, and kind of interesting, but it's been also just not normal to try to like fit it onto a screen like this big.
Right.
You're always kind of like looking and seeing like, oh, John from New Orleans seems to think that was a great song. Thanks, John. It's like,
it's weird because it's like I'm looking at your video, but I'm not really making eye contact because I should be looking at the camera. So it's just like weird. Yeah. It is a very strange thing. We've actually just started to have music venues open back up, like smaller ones.
Oh, wow.
I went and saw a buddy play at this place called Soundcheck Studio. So it was like outdoors, and you didn't buy one ticket. You bought like a table's worth of tickets.
Right.
So you sat with the people that you came with, and you couldn't get up and walk around. And so it was weird, but it was really nice just to kind of see live music again.
I think we are all going to have to accept some form of that, like easing back into it. Like it's like, oh God, we're all lounge singers now. You know, everyone's sitting
Yeah, kind of.
drinking martinis, and we're trying to like do our thing. That usually people are all sweaty and like bouncing up and down. And
Yeah.
it's an adjustment, no matter what. It's like you can't complain. Everybody's doing this. You know, we're all going through it. So
Yeah, it's I think the bands that will really suffer kind of like the, you know, the metal and hardcore type bands that it's like that just to sit and watch, you know, a Pantera like band just almost doesn't make sense, you know.
no. And I mean, like, you know, maybe it will. Like, I don't know. You know, we haven't been able to figure it out yet. We're working on something that
Yeah.
is exciting to me because, you know, we want to lean into this. Like, we want to be kind of forward thinking and try to like make something special on the internet. We've got friends that have like found a way to make really loud music cool, you know, through like a digital format.
Mhm.
And now we're working on it, but like it requires a change in your thinking, you know. And I think a lot of creative people would normally have done it that way, but we're also saturated in the business side of things now too, that sometimes we get up our own ass about it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, realizing that it can't be the same, you know, like embracing that it can't be the same. It's not a concert.
Right.
It's not a live concert. It's a broadcast.
Mhm.
You know, and that's something like, you know, people make TV shows all the time
With music acts.
with music acts.
Yeah.
So we're trying to think about it like that. Like, what could we bring to the table that would be worth, you know, asking somebody to pay a little money and sit down in front of a screen and watch our band, you know? So we're trying to like think about it that way.
Yeah, and it's cool to see kind of like some of the innovation that's going on. There's a big festival out here called Levitate that obviously got canceled this year, and it was supposed to happen this past weekend. And one of the local like up and coming bands that was supposed to play there, they have like a little food. They call it Levitate's Backyard or something like that. It's an outdoor food venue, and so they played there. And I mean, people are so eager for entertainment. It's like they sold out 3 nights in like a matter of minutes.
Crazy.
And then they ended up live streaming the show too. So I mean, people are really trying to figure out, and I'm kind of surprised that nothing has really caught fire yet. Like no one's really come up with that idea that everyone's like, oh, we're gonna do that now. Everyone still seems to be trying to like kind of piece together like what's the best option.
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, and like we've got friends up here. I don't know if you ever heard of the band July Talk.
No.
They're amazing. You should check them out.
Yeah.
But they're doing a drive-in concert. Like they're one of the first.
Oh, I've heard about those. I was wondering how those would be.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. You know, like, and my brain immediately went to like, oh my God, where are people going to take shits? You know, like,
yeah, I mean, it's important. Yeah,
it's important. You know, and so, but I'm sure they're working all that out. So I'm like fascinated to see what happens there. You know, it's weird that we're putting all this energy into something that's actually so temporary. You know. As hopeless and ominous as it seems, it's temporary. And,
yeah.
I'm impressed that we're all like just being as creative as we are instead of just sitting back and being like, well, I'll take a year-long vacation.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like I remember when it started, people were like, "Oh, no one's ever gonna hug anyone ever again," and I'm like, I don't really think that's a thing.
Yeah, as if a pandemic completely changed the fabric of our DNA.
Right. And I honestly think it's going to be a matter of like, I'd say probably like another year from now. I think we're all going to just kind of look around and be like, oh, shit's back to normal. When did that happen?
Yeah. It'll probably be like this weird period where it's been back to normal and okay to hug people for way longer than we allowed, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it'll take us 2 months to finally, but when we do, man, those hugs are going to feel fucking good.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
On the way.
How is things up in Toronto? Are things kind of starting to open up? Are you guys still kind of locked down? Or
we're pretty good compared to you guys.
Well, see, we're in New England.
It's different, yeah.
Yeah, we're actually doing pretty well. I actually ran into someone Saturday morning. I think it was Saturday morning. And they're like, "Oh, we just got off a plane from Georgia," and I'm like, "Great, go away."
Like, why are you here?
Yeah, I don't want you here.
Yeah. it's nice to hear that you guys. I mean, pretty much the whole Northeast seems to have it under control, and it's similar up here. You know, we're not. It was just like you guys. We had the same like regional. Like BC was amazing, and
Yeah.
Ontario, where I am, is the worst. But even Ontario now is like got their shit together, and you know, we're still like the thing about Canadians. I think that's a little different than a lot of Americans. Probably New Englanders are very similar to Canadians, from what I can tell.
We like hockey.
What's that?
We like hockey.
Yeah, exactly. You like hockey. It's just as cold there as it is here. You
Mhm.
know, you seem to care about other people.
Mostly, yeah.
But like, it is quite fascinating to watch the difference between like the struggle about mask wearing in particular has been very fascinating to me.
Has it been that way up there, or are you guys pretty all cool with
We've
it?
got like fringe losers like doing their thing, but not like down south. Like
Yeah.
like the fact that it becomes this ideological, you know, statement of freedom and liberty is hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's
Staying alive was not part of liberty.
it starts with life, liberty.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, it's extremely frustrating. You know, Massachusetts is a very democratic state, but where I live is very kind of a Republican hotbed.
Right.
But even around here, people are still pretty cool. You get the few, like you said, scumbags that, you know, will walk, just like put their hand over their mouth, and you're like, you're literally just insulting me. I'd rather you just be a jerk about it. I don't understand the you're infringing upon my freedoms because we want everyone to be healthy. And
I think that is a very unique to America thing, and that's sort of what I was getting at. Is we don't have that up here where you use liberty as a way to get out of things, as a way to get out of like helping other people and shit. Like we do have a slightly, and I'm not saying, you know, clearly there are parts of the States that are just like us, but yeah, it's very strange. You don't see it anywhere else except maybe in parts of England, I think, but. That kind of weird nationalism that gets tied into the things that you should or shouldn't do.
Yeah, and it's become so toxic where, you know, God forbid you have any kind of opinion against being like, oh, well, maybe our cops shouldn't beat up black people. And it's like, why don't you love America? And you're like, that's not what I said, man.
Yeah. I think really what that is, I mean, if you want to get into it, is like it really is. It's not just America; it's here too, and it is this like thing that I think the internet had a big part in causing this polarization of everything. And you really can't. There's no time for the middle of thing and for gray ideas or for long form ideas, like long form podcasts.
Yeah.
Seem insane to a lot of people, I think, because it's like 45 minutes. I have 3 seconds. Explain to me what you have to say, and then get the hell out of my face.
Yeah, and it's like the internet is so set up to, like, I find the way to like, and part of why we do the podcast is because we get to meet all sorts of people from all over the place. Actually, shortly after I record with you, I'm recording with someone from down in Alabama, so that'll be real interesting.
Exactly.
But like, I feel like that's how I learn. That's how I learn about people. I get others' opinions.
Yeah.
It's to talk to other people and experience places and people and things. But with the internet, it is so designed just to feed back the things that, you know, you Googled this, so I'm just going to keep feeding that thing to you over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's also not, you know, besides just like confirmation bias and everything else that comes out of it, you're also just, you can't know somebody in that short of time or that few characters. You really,
Right.
I mean, even this 45 to an hour conversation we're going to have, like, we're not going to know each other that well. We'll know each other better than most people.
Yeah. And
But it takes a long time to like, you know, somebody or somebody's ideas, and that seems gone, you know. And it's not just about knowing people, but it's about sharing ideas, and that's where polarization comes from. You know, we have this refusal to dive deep, except for like those of us who still love podcasts and those of us who still love books.
Yeah,
you know, we exist still. It's just there seems to be like a mutation happening where like the majority isn't seeking out that long form experience anymore.
And it's even just kind of, I drive my housemate crazy because I'm like, well, the question you should always be asking is why.
Right.
Like, people complain about like, is it Terrible Twos where the kid's just like, why? And I'm like, I think that's great, because it really, as even for the child pushing the adult, being like, and I feel the problem is we don't like to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. And I, like for a long time, that was me, I was a pretty ballsy kid, cocky guy, like always was right, had my opinions and everyone else was wrong. And it took me a while to realize that there's like great pleasure in realizing that other ideas and other perspectives could possibly be the correct perspective, or at least bring value to your own perspective.
Right.
I think if we all just felt that way, I think a lot of what we're experiencing lately would be gone and over, and we'd be a lot happier as countries, but both are countries.
You seem like a pretty, at least politically versed person. Do you try to like have a political message in your music at all, or?
I think early on I tried.
Yeah.
I definitely tried, and trying is the wrong way to go about it. I think there's a the worst examples of it were when you could hear me preaching.
Yeah.
And I think art, that's not like the value of the artistic experience, both for the person creating it and for people absorbing. I think the best, the last record that we did, as sort of cerebral as it was, it wasn't supposed to be a political record. I just fallen in love, and like I was writing a bunch of love songs, and then Trump entered the election, and then we toured the States, and there was this like incredible kind of like, I couldn't ignore it. Right. And so it seeps in.
Yeah.
It seeps into the music in ways that, like, I think the best way to be political in your art is to tell stories with it, and let the experience, the socio-political experience, permeate those stories, rather than the other way around and just like spew a bunch of opinions and make them rhyme. Rhyming opinions suck.
That should be a shirt.
Yeah.
So when you go to write, like you were talking about, you're writing love songs because you just fallen in love. Do you find that that's just kind of a natural thing, that like your spot in life kind of just automatically is reflected in your music?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, when you're not doing that, I think that you make less direct, genuine art that people will resonate with. Mm-hmm. The other thing that like took me a while to figure out, and I think I'm probably still figuring out, is like, you don't have to write the exact experience of your audience.
Yeah.
You have to write your exact experience, and the more genuine and well communicated those feelings and experiences are, the more it resonates with people that might not even be going through that exact experience. The human experience has all these layers, and I feel like we all have different experiences, but they all lock together. Mm-hmm. And have universalities that, like, that's kind of the power of telling those kinds of stories through art. Is, I think, when you hit on something that's really yours, and then give it to other people, they understand their own shit better, and that's when you have this communal experience of art, and you're just like out of your basement, and you're not just by yourself anymore.
Yeah, that's like a great point, because you can't really, I mean, you may have a point to your song, but you can't control how the other person's gonna interpret it. I remember we had an art show, and someone had painted a portrait of a dog, and this woman comes up and she's like, "Oh my God, I love this painting." I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's a really cute dog." And she's like, "No, it reminds me of my father." And I'm like, "Did your father have a dog like that?" And she's like, "No, but that dog's face looks like my father." And I'm just looking at being like, "Sure, great," And so it became like I think, I can't remember if she bought the painting or not, but like it became like a really important thing to her because she lost her father, and this Pomeranian painting reminded her of her dad for some reason. And
that's a perfect example.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can't control that. You could never plan for that.
No, and that's the other thing is, I think I spent so long like in this outcomes-based songwriting trap, where you're thinking about, you want to make people feel something
Mhm.
specific, or you want to write something that hits number 12 on the chart. And like it's like that experience is the worst, and you'll have people your whole life tricking you into thinking that way about making art, when you're trying to be sort of make it a career. And it just sucks. It never works out. It's always the stuff where you weren't thinking of the outcome of the song, where you didn't have time, or you were just so in it that you weren't thinking about who would absorb it or how, or whether it would do well. And those are the best tunes, always.
Yeah, because I think you're more, like you said, genuine, but you're also kind of more relaxed. You're not overthinking it. And
yeah, you can't really intellectualize the songwriting process. If you do, I don't know. I mean, you can. It just sucks.
Like, well, it's funny. Like I was listening to a band, and I will absolutely not say who it was. But I know one of the musicians has been like traditionally trained and been to like Juilliard, and for all intents and purposes should be an amazing musician. And then you listen to the songs and you're just like, I don't, granted, you like what you like and that's fine. But like, listen, I'm like, I just don't get it. I almost feel like almost too much knowledge could be a like you're trying to make it elaborate when you could just be like, the song Lollipop in the 50s is still kind of a hit.
Yeah, man. And like, I'm like a big pop apologist, like I'm even though sometimes our music might not sound like a pop song, I think it always comes from a place of like, man, what would Neil Diamond do? He's like the least cool person in the world, but what would Neil Diamond do?
So I'm gonna play my favorite bar game with you. And this is a great game to play when you're hanging at a bar and you don't know the people you're with very well, is to ask them what is the concert they attended that they were the most embarrassed to go to.
Embarrassed.
The kind of that either guilty pleasure or like, oh man, like I'll tell you, mine was Yanni.
Oh dude, wow.
And it's like, people are like, really? And I'm like, yeah, it's not really a long story, but it's not an interesting story. But yeah, I went and saw Yanni.
I bet that was an epic concert though. I mean, I've seen clips of that. His hair's like blowing in the...
It was classical metal, really, because I mean, he's got the long hair and the light show, and
it's like 90 people on stage.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a concert I still remember, and I've seen other bands that I'm like, were kind of forgettable. So it's like, was it a bad concert?
Yeah.
I can still remember it.
I think, like, at the time, though, were you like, you went and you were into it, and then you only realized later you were embarrassed about it? Is that
no, I'm more like, my ex-wife was like, I want to go see Yanni. I'm like, fine.
Like, you snuck in. Like,
yeah.
I see it. Okay.
So she like, I had to go with her kind of thing. I
think, and this might, it's not cool in my circle of friends to like the Counting Crows.
Yep.
But I grew up loving Counting Crows and unapologetically, I think, still looking back, and I'm only talking about the first couple of records, but I think those are badass records. And I went to the show even though all my friends thought I was lame.
Did you go recently?
No. Oh God, no.
Oh, so
I wouldn't forgive myself for going to any of the more recent shows. But
they toured around here like real recently, like maybe last year, a year and a half ago. And I had a few friends from different friend circles who went.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up and they're like, oh my God, you're on stage. And I'm like 3 different people were sending me pictures of the lead singer being like, he looks just like you. I'm like, you're all a bunch of assholes.
Adam Jarrett's.
Yeah. So it was a very weird experience because it came from like 3 different people who don't know each other. So it wasn't just like one group being jerks.
I'll have to go look up his current photography and see.
Yeah.
I mean, he must have lost the dreads because unless you're hiding them under that hat.
No. I think they're gone. I don't remember, but maybe I'll get them on the podcast and just put it up as a video podcast.
Yeah,
just
have a split screen going.
Yeah. Be interesting. So when you do write music, have you been writing music in lockdown, or have you been Yeah,
I went through this it wasn't a writer's block the last few years. It was like a finishing block, and I was writing tons. and the band was like just killing everything that I brought to the band. It was just like, man, we were just in a pocket. We knew what we wanted to be. It was amazing. And then I would always just have this self-doubt thing that would have me shut it down and like move on to the next thing, you know? And so what ended up happening is going into that California trip when the whole world fell apart, it was like, I think we had 25 tunes that weren't just like, that didn't include the B-sides, you know, like those were songs that we thought on a record. And so that's how this current record that just is about to come out happened. You know, like we had, I guess, you know, we picked around 7 or 8 tunes when we got back from California and realized we had to, like, we were quarantined in our own separate apartments, except me and Curdy, my partner. You know, everybody, we couldn't see each other. And we ended up doing this on Zoom.
Yep.
You know, and we picked the right songs that we wanted to put on a record. We were like, it's time to finish something. And without seeing each other, we would just like email guitar tracks back and forth and bass tracks and ideas, and we would Zoom. And then we started Zooming with this amazing, you know, mix engineer producer, Marcus Paquin in Montreal. I'd never met him, you know, like, and we had this crazy finishing a record experience over the internet. And you know, now that we've already put 3 tunes out and there's a record coming out in a month, but then, you know, what happened was there's still these other, you know, 15, 16, 17 songs that we still think are amazing and want to finish. So now that's what we're doing. We're just like, lockdown is just like, I'm just at the piano and, you know, we're just finishing what we started finally, you know. It took a pandemic to teach me how to finish things.
It's awesome. And you know, there are, you know, there's silver linings to everything. And, you know, from our standpoint, for the longest time, I'm like, I hate podcasts that are recorded like via Skype. I'm like, they sound terrible. They're talking over each other constantly because it's that weird delay. And then when the pandemic hit, you know, Zoom became like the thing. And I'm like, this is way better. The audio's pretty decent. I mean, we've had some, you know, issues with people with bad Wi-Fi connections or whatever, but, you know, we've probably done, I don't know, 20-ish episodes via Zoom. And I'm like, it's pretty solid. I would consider using it post-pandemic. And we've been able to, you know, reach out to, you know, people in Toronto and the UK and Alabama. I'll let you know how that one goes.
There's lots of great folks in Alabama.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. There's also some Trump supporters. And
that's fine. Good
yeah.
for them.
But yeah,
takes all kinds, as my dad would say.
Yeah, does it?
Well, yeah.
So yeah, it's been really great. We've gotten some phenomenal guests, so it's been a lot of fun. And you know, like I said, I do this because I like to meet new people, and I've always said that I feel like all creative types are really cut from the same material, and I think it's really obvious once you start talking to them. And do you find yourself kind of like not necessarily seeking out, but like are your circle of friends generally creative people, even if they're not musicians?
Yeah. I would say, and that might just be because of who you run with for years and years, you know, like I've always just been attracted to people that are creative, and it's also, you know, it's a bit of a insufferable experience, you know, to be honest, and being able to share it, or at least, you know, understand it through other people's experiences kind of gets you by. So, you know, I'm not the kind of person that's good at having 2,700 friends. And,
yeah.
And so, like, you know, I pick them carefully, and I think the few folks that have become close friends besides my bandmates are the ones who, like, you know, I can relate to and understand that experience. I do have a few friends that are just like, you know, web designers or whatever, but that's because everybody needs a website.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good job to get into. I'll have to look into that. I got laid off from my day job, so it's like it's been job hunting for the past 3 weeks. Yeah. So at what point were you like, music can be my day job, quote unquote day job?
Oh, I don't think I ever was. Some days I still wonder if it is my day job. It's I think as a kid it was definitely going to be my day job, and like there was no other choice. It was more than a dream, it was a certainty. I think that's the only reason, that got so embedded in me. I think everyone in our band has had that in their body. That's why we're still doing it. I think it's not a kind process to the brain and the body, and so it really has to be in you to like demand out of the world, and like push through all the rejection that happens. And as far as like now, we are kind of making a go of it as our careers, but the pandemic especially, but even before the pandemic, sort of makes you go, man, the world has really stripped away most opportunity for music to be a career for even 99% of artists, no matter what their stripe or talent level. It doesn't really work for most people anymore.
Yeah.
And that's not to be depressing about it. It's just sort of like, again, trying to remove that outcome-based thing from my work. I hope that we can continue to do this as a career forever, but I got no illusions about how insane that would be. And so, I think just continuing to keep the head down and working and not worrying about whether it's a career or not. Is it a career if you don't have any other income sources?
Yeah.
Or is it a career if it feels like your primary vocation, or is it a career because it's all you think about? It depends how to define it as a career. It's so nebulous. It's not something you go into an office every day and like get a check and they take off your CPP or whatever you have down south, and then you get money when you're 65. So I don't know how to define it career-wise.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was thinking, I know a lot of musicians down here who it is their sole occupation is to play music, but they're playing in bars 4 nights a week doing cover music. Yeah. And it's like, yes, it's their occupation, but would I consider them if I said he's like a career musician, I don't necessarily think of, the cover band playing in a bar. I think of someone touring, that kind of thing.
I mean, they're doing better than most of us. A lot of cover bands and bars are doing better than a lot of us.
Yeah.
But it's a different experience for sure. It's not. They're musicians.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, it's just a different choice, and I don't, knowing the process, I totally understand why people go that route and enjoy it and love it. And sometimes I think I would love it a lot more than this.
It's like, I didn't mean to sound like I was throwing shade, because some of them are really good friends of mine.
Sure.
And it's just a different avenue, I think. Like a lot of people, when their kids are like, oh, I want to go to art school, and they're like, well, have a fallback, or artists don't make any money, and be like, oh, they absolutely do, but you're thinking of like a fine artist like Michelangelo, which Michelangelo did fine. But it's like that's what you're thinking of, but art nowadays is animators and illustrators and graphic designers. They're making plenty of money. It's
kind of fascinating, because I was like, when I was 17, I had 2 loves. I had film and I had music.
Yeah.
And I ended up choosing music, and now looking at like the Netflix revolution and everything, I'm like, fuck.
Oh yeah, like
clearly, the film people are like raking it in, and, and they still get to make very artistic work, and and that's awesome. The same revolution hasn't happened for music.
Yeah, I almost feel like Netflix has really helped, because the people can make these quote unquote TV shows that aren't dependent on whether a sponsor is going to buy an ad.
Yeah.
So it can be edgy, it can be weird. Like I know Umbrella Academy season 2 is due out like any time now. I don't know if you've seen that.
You got to see season 1.
Huh?
Is it? I got to see season 1. I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's great. It's like crazy weird X-Men.
Oh, all right. Okay.
I can't remember. I think there's like 7 kids who all have like superpowers, but they're like you pick up like way later in life, and like
My
one of
partner was watching that. Yes, I
Yeah.
did. I did see it once in a while.
it's really good.
Cool.
But it's like that would never get on, a network station down here because
Yeah.
first of all, they'd be like, "That's weird. No one wants to see that." But
Yeah, I think it's kind of a bummer that hasn't happened in music yet. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, music's easier to make than films, so
Yeah.
there's a lot more of it and a lot more dynamic in the spectrum of good and bad music, to put it politely. So I feel like there's so much out there that, but then I also think the real reason is there's a homogeneousness to what makes money in the music world.
yeah,
It's not about being edgy these days, really, unless you're in certain genres.
Mhm.
Certain genres still allow for it. Hip hop still allows for edginess.
yeah,
In the genre that we're in, there's not as much room for that, which is weird because like guitar music used to be the edgy music, and now we're all just kind of like, how do we find that gooey middle where we get the most ad clicks?
yeah.
I'm not like that, but like I feel like that's what happened in our genre.
And it's weird because like I have no qualms about paying, $13 or whatever Netflix is, and I subscribe to Disney Plus. But then when it comes to like Spotify, I'm like, no, I'll listen to the ads, and
Right.
so it's almost, I don't want to say like I feel like I deserve free music, but I feel like free music is far more accessible.
Yeah.
So that you don't have that kind of, oh, we'll pay you to make weird creative music because we'll make it on the other end kind of thing.
There's definitely that ongoing belief that we'll be doing it anyway, whether you pay us or not. And therefore, why give us more
Yeah.
than the minimum? I think that may be true to a degree, but I'm starting to feel a groundswell among the more talented people in the business that I know, people far more talented than me, that they're not really going to put up with it anymore. And if people that talented are thinking of quitting, we better watch out, because I think a world with only shitty music in it would be a real bummer. And I do think like we live in a society where a good chunk of people will listen to what they're told is good, because music is hard to do and to understand. And it's not the same kind of like all senses engaging as film. And a lot of people rely on it as background music or like, getting them through a drive or whatever. So I know it's very different, but yeah, I'm worried that we're going to see a bit of an exodus among musicians and composers and songwriters if something doesn't change, and that would suck.
Oh, it'd be terrible. Like we'd be stuck with nothing but Justin Bieber.
Yeah, there's only so many times I can listen to that Radioactive song before I'm like,
yeah.
Is there more to rock and roll than this anymore?
But it's weird because like my kids will, we always like exchange like, oh, listen to this band kind of thing, and but predominantly what they listen to is, especially my daughter, Nirvana and the Beatles, and so it almost feels like they're like, the stuff nowadays, there's some good bands, but they're kind of even like, no, it is missing something.
How old's your daughter?
My daughter's 16.
That gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah. She loves Nirvana, Green Day.
Where'd she pick that up? Is that your fault, or did she surprise you with that?
She kind of surprised me with Nirvana. It was one of those. I don't know where. I'm a huge Nirvana fan. I grew up like I graduated in '93. I was right in the Nirvana sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, because like she was kind of like heading down that kind of girl teeny bopper, but emo, like My Chemical Romance-y kind of, and I'm not insulting them at all. That's kind of their niche. so that's kind of like the avenue she was headed down. And then, I mean, she still listens to that stuff, and she'll give me like strange bands that I've never heard of to listen to. But yeah, then I mean, the two of them, my son definitely picked up like older metal and hair metal, because when he was real little, we used to watch old episodes of the Muppets.
Love me the Muppets.
Yeah, and one of his favorite episodes was with Alice Cooper.
Oh, amazing! Yeah.
Yeah, so then I'm like, oh, you like Alice Cooper? Check this out and check this out. And
yeah.
So he's definitely more into the metal, but he loves the Beatles too. So
I think maybe there's gonna, ever the optimist. I think maybe we just had this one generation that was like, no, that music doesn't make sense to me. But I have heard that like people in their late teens right now are getting into grunge and getting into like even things like Britpop, which is like a cloth that I was cut from that you would think would be dead forever.
Yeah.
Like a lot of cool kids are listening to Pulp in coffee shops, and I'm like,
oh, one of my daughter's favorite bands is Gorillaz.
Oh, seriously? That's
Yeah.
and that's like that gives me some hope, And it's always a cycle, and you can't always be like making the cool music. And I think the rule is like just make what you feel, and eventually shit comes back around. But
yeah,
what do I know?
but that's kind of being the genuine thing, if you don't want to be like a boy band that's assembled to sell records. Yeah.
No. And there's times where you get drawn in by the idea of, even if you're not gonna be in a boy band, it's because you're not 19 anymore. Like you still get bought. You still start to wonder, like, well, if we just change this about ourselves or that about ourselves, would we sell this many more records? And that's the grossest trap to fall into. And your audience can smell it a mile away. People smell it.
Yeah. So you said there's a new album. Do you have a date for when that album's coming out?
Yeah, it comes out August 7th.
Oh, nice. So this podcast, I think, will go up sort of around there. Might come up a little later than that, so our listeners can look for that. I'm assuming on all the Spotify's and
save that on the Spotify's and the Apple Musics and but we're also like we still make vinyl, so if anybody wants
really?
Yeah, and we're only selling it, like we recently pulled everything in and we started our own record label, so we're only selling it direct on our website.
Okay. What's the website?
It's fastromanics.com.
Okay. So they can go there, and I'm sure they can find you on social media and such.
Yeah. Please come hang out.
Is there one that you're more active on?
We're starting to be more into the Instagram thing.
Yeah.
Instagram feels like a little bit less polluted than Facebook. And like we just seem to be getting the most, like people write us the most on Instagram, so we're hanging out there the most lately. We were late to that whole thing, but now we're sort of like hanging out there.
Nice.
And definitely like, you'll never ever find us on TikTok ever.
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of stuff coming out about that, like how it's, and again, you don't know how much is bullshit and how much is real, but it's like some sort of Chinese company that's stealing information or blah, blah, blah. I don't know.
I'm always a little skeptical when like the party line is the Chinese are stealing our secrets through this or that. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that's...
Yeah, through TikTok. And it's like, what secrets are in TikTok?
Okay, Mr. Pence. Take that under advisement.
Yeah.
Everything else you said.
They're going to figure out that, my teenage, kid made miniature pancake cereal. They've got us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's been my whole attitude towards this privacy thing, is like I got nothing anybody wants.
People are like, oh, they could steal your identity. I'm like, man, I got child support. They can have it. They can have my identity.
You want in, take it.
Yeah. My thing was always like, you can't be mad that someone's stealing stuff, your information off of Facebook that you put up on Facebook.
Yeah, we all bought into this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We all put phones in our pockets, and now we're all worried that people who know what we're doing at any one time. I'm like, you signed on the dotted line when you bought a friggin' iPhone.
Yeah.
Like,
so get rid of it if it's that big of a concern for you.
It's not. Like everyone's admitting through the compulsion to have an iPhone and to tap on it constantly all day that we actually don't care about this. Those of us who say we do are just like trying to be upset about something or something. It's
gonna know where I am. Yeah, but no one cares where you are.
where you are does not matter.
Yeah.
You know.
So, but this has been fun, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And, you know, I mean, you're one of the few musicians that I've talked to who've been like, no, I've been really productive through quarantine. Most people are like, I just haven't had the motivation. So
I've been George Costanza-ing it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't work very well in normal times, but in pandemics, oh yeah, I'll make 8 records.
So before we go, let me ask you one more question. You said you were teetering between music and film. What is your must-see film?
Ooh, I mean, I always tell people if you haven't seen Dr. Strangelove, you should probably see Dr. Strangelove because it kind of started everything for me. Yeah. I'm loving film, so that's a place to start for sure, especially lately. I think it would be a good film to watch. Yeah,
I'm thinking, like, I've honestly never seen it, but I'm thinking what I know about it, I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to watch it right.
I think it would be a good way to think about what's happening right now is to watch something like Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah. All right, so our listeners should check that out. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere.
Has to be. Yeah. Everything's everywhere.
It's so readily available. But thanks again for chatting, and thanks for our listeners listening. We'll see you guys again next week.
Thanks. See ya.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or on Instagram at Inebri-art6. You can email us at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And make sure you listen to the other podcasts on the Inebri-art Podcast Network, including Bar Talk, Old Colony Cast, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror Podcast, and our newest one, Theme Park Legends, a podcast about working at theme parks. What else? And we'll catch you again next time.